All right. Hello. Can everyone hear me? Nope.
Test 1, 2. Clickety click.
Okay. All right. And here we are. My sincere apologies. All right. At this point, I will call to order the meeting of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee on Thursday, June 8th, 2023 at 7:07 p.m. I'd like to begin by inviting you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, as we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and also live streamed on HW Cam. Thank you, Amy, for the reminder. I appreciate it. Before we get started, I just wanted to, some official business, which is that our recording secretary and our committee secretary are both not here. So Julia is our vice secretary. If you could just take brief notes on any votes, just so that there's some. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity, this is time to have your voice heard. Sorry. We ask you if you would like to make a comment either in the room or on Zoom. I ask you to state your name to begin with and your address, and please spell your name so that we can get it correct in the minutes. I ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And I think that's it. If there is anyone in the room who would like to make a comment, I'd ask that you please approach the podium now. Welcome.
David Smolinski, Smolinski, 12 Red Coach Road. I was wondering why there's an LGBT flag there, because it doesn't include everyone. So I was just wondering why. It seems kind of discriminatory.
So I should have explained, and I tried to explain. At public comments, a lot of times people really do want, and I know it can feel frustrating, people are looking for a dialogue back and forth. And public comment is really an opportunity for you to give us your opinion and so that we can listen to you. So I want to hear your opinion, but we're not going to have a back and forth dialogue.
Yeah, okay, my opinion was just having everyone flag. That was an opinion. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience here who has a public comment? Okay. Mr. Tracy, it looks like we have somebody on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to make a public comment?
I would like to make a comment. Ty, you're on if you'd like to make a public comment.
Okay. So just, I don't know if, I'm not sure that Ty can actually hear me, but just so everyone knows that the best way to view the meeting is on HW Cam if you want to view the meeting. The Zoom link is really just for those people who can't attend the meeting but want to make a comment. So we will, yes, Jen.
Did you remember to announce that the meeting's being recorded?
I did. Thank you, though. Thank you, though. It's something that I frequently struggle with, so I appreciate it. Okay, at this point, we'll close the Zoom link.
Okay, we're closing the Zoom link.
All right. Thank you. Next up, we'll have a review of this portion of our school committee protocols. Julia?
As elected members of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Number 5, if an individual school committee member receives an email relevant to overall district policy or operations, they will forward it to the full school committee and the superintendent.
Thank you.
I actually have a question about that.
Okay.
Sorry. I thought we were not supposed to forward emails to the full committee. We can.
Well, it's not, it's great, and we can talk about this.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question, actually, and we can all do a little procedural. It's not an email from you, it would be an email from a citizen.
Yes.
That was
With no
relevant.
comment,
That was
I can forward it to
correct.
the
So
committee.
if you received many times, or I should just say to anyone who might be watching, many times a citizen with a concern might email the entire committee, but sometimes they might just choose to email just one member, and it's important if it's really relevant to policy or something we're discussing that the whole committee have that information.
Perfect.
Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. And that's why we read them, so that they brought forth. I was just thinking that as you were reading, I was thinking to myself, well, maybe that it's interesting that it says email specifically. Maybe we should change it to communication because,
Right.
So just thought, food for thought. Okay. Next up, our student representative, Paul Jeong, is here to give us a report.
So these are student activities from the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District. First we have Hamilton Wenham Regional High School. For the high school, we had the spring concert and an art show, and the senior art show on May 9th. We had junior prom on May 12th. For grade 9 and 10, we had MCAS for both of those classes. And for student government elections, they were held on June 2nd. Scholarships were handed out for May 24th for the seniors. And we did a community event where seniors would help seniors on May 30th. They had a food drive from May 8th to May 18th, and the class of 2025 electronics fundraiser. And we had an award ceremony for Hamilton Wenham High School on June 7th. We have high school's clubs and sports, which we are still continuing with: the boys and girls tennis, boys and girls lacrosse, baseball, track and field, and the spring 2023, I don't know why it says that, state tournament, which our sports are competing in with other schools. In our clubs, we have the fashion club, the book club, art club, ceramics, and environmental club. And next we have the Miles River Middle School. There was the middle school spring concert on May 16. We had science program for grades 4 and 5. And we had the final Friends of Hamilton Wenham Regional High School and Miles River final meeting on May 23rd. And we had the HWFOTA Melody Miles on May 27th. So for Winthrop School, we have the Winthrop visits the high school on May 9th for a field trip for the history tour, and the grade 5 was visiting the public library on May 22nd. And they had kindergarten and grade 1 family music morning. They had the elementary ride, walk, and wheel to school day on May 19th. And them, along with the other elementary schools, will have a class 2023 parade on the elementary schools on June 1st. And the grade 3 field trip to Wenham Museum on May 23rd. Cutler School, we had the same events as we had for the Winthrop, like the walk and the parade. They also, however, have a 5th grade play on June 1st. And finally, for Bucher, we have the elementary band and chorus concert on May 22nd. We had the Class 2023 parade along with the other elementary schools, and that has most of the same events as the other schools do. So that is about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a quick shout out. Let you ask questions. I just wanted to make a quick shout out to the Bike and Walk to School Day. I actually emailed the superintendent. I drove past Cutler School and I have never seen so many bicycles. It was amazing. It just really made me smile to see that. It was really, and I actually didn't have to say take note of the other two elementary schools, but I saw it at Cutler and it was really pretty cool. So thank you for sharing all that information. Does anyone have any questions for Paul? Thank you. We appreciate you coming and giving that information. And I think at this point, we're going to flow right into Mr. Tracy.
Yep, I'm going to take a quick switcheroo here, and while Paul's here, and we have two of our other presenters during the school year, Julia and Whitney. We want to thank them for coming to our meetings and doing their presentations about the classes and the schools and kind of getting the research done and trying to figure out what was going on where. Most of all, taking a break from, of course, your homework to come here to share time with us, and we really appreciate it. So we have a token of our appreciation for each of you. Straightforward. It's a district water bottle, but there's also a gift card to Starbucks in there for you. So we really appreciate what you have done for us. This one's yours, Paul. Bring up Whitney and Julia.
Come on up.
This one's for Whitney. This one's for Julia. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think if I have it right, somebody can correct me. I think Julia, Whitney are presidents of their classes for next year. Paul, you're VP, is that what I read? Yes, so we're all still officers. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for coming throughout the whole year, and we look forward to more next year.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And I mean, I'll say, but I'll let other people if you want to. It means so much that you guys take the time. It really, I'll speak just personally for myself that I don't, my kids are not in the schools anymore. They're grown up. It really is important to me to have a student perspective, to come to this meeting, to hear from you directly. It really helps bring us into the schools, and I'm appreciative. And it's exciting that you're all going to continue on in what is local government, because this is a group of people who value that highly. So thank you for that. It's certainly. Julia is very kindly saying, even though she knows you're fascinated by local government, if you.
Your homework.
For finals, right?
You are absolutely welcome to stay always, but you are also welcome to dash out if you need to. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items from the consent agenda that they would like to hold? Nope. All right. Julia, I think we're looking for a motion.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second by Jen Carr. All those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay. First up on new business is the Spain field trip. And I think that's going to be Mr. Tracy.
It's going to be
is
me
that correct?
tonight, yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Scarpacci got tied up with something, so I am, this is actually a fairly easy one. We approved a few weeks back the trip to Colombia, and within a very short amount of time, the company came back to us and said that they had received warnings, changes in the travel warnings. They had canceled all the trips that they had scheduled for schools going to Colombia. And as you know, like places like Peru and things are still places that these companies are not willing to go or able to go. So in a really quick shift, Aya and Matt and the crew was able to get another Spain trip for the high school. The interesting thing about this is the kids that would go on this are kids that missed it due to COVID. It was scheduled at the middle school at that back a few years back. So there's a whole number of kids at the high school now that would have missed that trip during COVID, and now will have the opportunity to go as well. So we'll have a Spain middle school trip and a Spain high school trip. It's a little bit more expensive comparatively. It's just really the switch to Spain is more expensive for hotels and food and things like that. So other than that, we're just looking to have this improved in place of the Colombia trip that was approved a few weeks back.
Okay. Questions?
Will this be an ongoing thing?
Spain? I think they want to try to do some different places. They're grappling with all of the restrictions around, like they'd like to go to South America. They'd like to go to some of the.
Yeah, I was just
houses.
wondering, because the freshmen missed DC and aren't eligible for this yet, so.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, it's every two.
Everyone gets an opportunity.
It's every 2 years. Well, there's a little secret I'll tell you that I saw for next meeting. There's a trip request coming from the Mandarin Group to Taiwan. So
Oh, that'll be fun.
that'll be in the opposite year. So we have shifting back and forth. There's also been in the past trips to Italy, trips to Austria, trips to Japan. So those rotate in on almost like once every 5 or 6 years. So there's still good opportunities for kids.
Thank you.
I guess I know the group, we sort of say this every time. I just always want to sort of bring up again about the cost and the making sure, I know that there are, or I assume, as everything, there's always opportunities for students who aren't able to afford this. But I always just want to, and I know the group does too, just ask about, not just about the money, but about making it comfortable and accessible for those kids, those families, to make sure that those funds are comfortable to ask for, I guess.
And we'll continue to keep our eyes wide open. And I think one of the beauties we have here in this district are the relationships with kids and staff, and knowing one another fairly closely. So sometimes we get a heads up on something that a student may not be willing to come forward on, that we can dig into a little bit. But there's opportunity to get monies for kids who and families who can't come up with the whole amount.
Yeah, because it's a real opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay. Right, it looks, I don't think we have a motion. Is that right?
Not yet.
Okay. Julia, when you're ready.
We have to vote on
Motion,
both
yeah.
of them?
Yep. On what?
Just the Spain
No,
trip to
just-
high school.
Yeah,
The
just
Spain
the one.
trip for the high school?
Yeah, we already did the Spain trip for the, yeah.
Okay. I move that the Hamilton Wenham School District approve the Spain field trip for the high school as presented.
Second.
Second by Jen Carr. Is there any further discussion? Nope. All right, all those in favor? That is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay. Next up, we have a presentation on literacy.
But we're going to invite up Jennifer Clifford, Director of Teaching and Learning, and I believe the 3 elementary principals that will be doing the presentation this evening. I'm going to switch off so Ben can get on this one. Should be good.
So we are pleased to be here tonight to give you an update on the status of
literacy at the elementary schools and our multi-tiered systems of support. I feel like we talked about it a lot last year, and it's time to come back and share some of the progress that we've made. The alignment of schools, tiers, and levels, that's a theme that you've heard us speak about over the last 2 years as we seek to coordinate our instructional practices, resources, assessment, and expectations for students through the work of our district literacy intervention specialists, who are here actually with us tonight, Rebecca Butler and Annie Drews, and our classroom teachers. We know that when our work is aligned, all of our students will benefit. A comprehensive multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS as we refer to it, is outlined in this graphic from DESE, something that we've been working on and hopefully a familiar picture for those of you who have been here. Tonight we'll review the work we've done to build our elementary systems of support using this model as the visual. It's important to understand the structures that we're using for literacy instruction. We haven't just changed how we're teaching students to read and write, we've changed several systems that surround our students and teachers as they focus on literacy skills. So looking inward on the model, you'll see the tiers of support that resemble a school building. Tier 1 is universal, meaning all students have access to this level of instruction and support. Tier 2, moving up, is targeted support, while Tier 3 at the top is the most intensive support. It's important to note that students move between these tiers flexibly. Those red arrows in the center of the building represent the elevators that move in both directions. And students move through those levels according to the data that we have around their reading abilities. And they're supported with their academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning needs in a fully built MTSS. The three tiers are also built on each other. If a student is in need of Tier 2 support, it happens in addition to, not instead of, Tier 1 support. This is something we focused heavily on in the past year, ensuring that all students have equitable access to Tier 1 materials and instruction. We also know this takes 4 to 7 years to implement. We're 2 years in, and we're really pleased with several of the gains that we've made, and we'd like to highlight that tonight. This is part 1 of our literacy roadmap. When our district literacy team convened in 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago, but it was just prior to the pandemic, we analyzed our district-wide reading data and determined we had work to do on the decoding side of instruction. In our past professional development, we had largely focused on language comprehension and literature and information reading standards. But by analyzing our reading data, we recognized that many of our students had challenges relating to reading fluency, indicating that we needed to take a closer look at how we teach the components of word recognition. So to help us better understand students' strengths and weaknesses in reading and better target our instruction, we evolved our reading assessments. That also happened during the pandemic. We had a way of assessing students, and certainly we were forged into a different way of assessing. I have memories of Annie sitting outside the school as we were trying to listen to what students were saying. They had masks on. We were really trying to do things that were almost impossible. So we evolved our reading assessments. We also immersed ourselves in learning about the best practices of reading instruction, and we've considerably changed our instructional materials. You'll recall that we've added a high-quality instructional program, Amplify CKLA, to all of our elementary, kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms through the substantial accelerating literacy grant we received last June. We brought CKLA into each classroom for full implementation last September, and while the initial implementation has certainly been challenging, we're optimistic about the results that we've seen so far. The principals are going to walk us through the tiers of instruction now, starting with Tier 1, universal support for all students. There you go.
So this graphic outlines the strategic shift that we have made this year in our Tier 1 literacy instruction using our new resource, Amplify CKLA. This graphic, Scarborough's reading rope, consists of a lower and upper strands that we are now deliberately using in our instruction for all students. The word recognition strands in the blue on the bottom of the visual include sounds, letters, and words. These 3 strands work together as a reader becomes accurate, fluent, and increasingly automatic in word recognition skills with repetition and practice. The language comprehension strands in the orange at the top of the visual include background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. These 5 strands reinforce one another and then weave together with the word recognition strands to produce a skilled reader given instruction and practice over time. Understanding the strands of the reading rope and ensuring that our Tier 1 instruction is based on the full rope has helped us to identify strengths and weaknesses in young readers and specifically target our instruction for students. Intervention for struggling readers is effective only when it addresses the student's specific weaknesses. This visual is an overview of the skills unit in kindergarten, first and second grade, which specifically addresses the word recognition strands, the blue strands of the reading rope on the last slide. You can now see how our new curriculum builds and reinforces skills and concepts across grade levels. For example, you can see in units 8, 9, and 10 in kindergarten, they're shaded pink. In first grade, the pink units 1 and 2 are directly connected to the kindergarten concepts taught in units 8, 9, and 10 in kindergarten, reinforcing and reviewing the skills students had previously learned, then building into a first grade progression. This happens again between first and second grade, indicated with the yellow shading. Each year begins by reinforcing skills and concepts from the previous year and then builds on them. This scope and sequence was used in all K-2 classrooms, giving us a solid shared foundation for teaching these skills. While our previous materials had a similar layout, the work this year allowed us to recommit deeply to this scope and sequence, giving all students access to instruction for these skills. Our new CKLA resource also provided more opportunities to practice and apply skills than our previous curriculum had.
Good evening. So we have learned a tremendous amount through the science of reading research about the importance of teaching as much content as possible with a focus on the language comprehension strand of the reading rope that you saw 2 slides ago. With vast and varied background knowledge, we know that children can access complex texts about many different topics. We've had the incredible opportunity this year to see this in action as children in every grade level learned about a variety of topics ranging from the human body to ancient Greek myths to historical topics about U.S. history to the Renaissance and Reformation. The excitement that teachers and students experienced learning this information and families hearing about what children were learning was truly inspiring. Additionally, you can see the thread of knowledge themes that are connected and build across the grade levels as students revisit and deepen their understanding of certain topics. For example, here you can see how the earth science concepts build over time, or poetry and myth builds, and so there's a lot of overlap from grade to grade going deeper. This slide here shows our DIBELS composite scores. And this DIBELS composite score graphic shows growth from the beginning of the year until the end of the year for each grade level. Each grade level has a specific set of subtests that are weighted to show the likelihood of each student meeting the end of year benchmark. Students indicated in the green or blue bars have met grade level expectations, and through the continued implementation of our high quality tier 1 instruction will continue to make progress. The yellow bar indicates the students in each grade level who need strategic support in order to reach the end of year benchmark. The red bars show the number of students in need of intensive support in order to meet the end of year benchmarks. Intensive supports may be provided by any number of staff members. It could include students receiving tutorials as part of their IEP as students on educational plans. It could include supports from our literacy TAs, or it could also include intensive supports from a classroom teacher. If you notice, as you look from left to right, the blue and the green bars for this year's students show significant increases, and in turn, the red and yellow bars are shown decreasing. This is especially evident in kindergarten through second grade. We're also aware that in 3rd through 5th grades, while the first year of implementation has been incredibly successful, students had less foundational work to lay instruction upon, and we anticipate another significant jump in the coming year. The students who you see in red are in need of receiving these intensive supports to meet the benchmark, and again, the students in yellow are receiving strategic supports.
This chart shows the months of growth in the composite score at each grade level. The goal for all students has been 8 months of growth, as they received 8 months of instruction from early October to early May, when the benchmarks were assessed. All grades and cohorts were able to exceed this goal, with some far exceeding it. Each grade is divided into 3 groups: students who received only Tier 1 instruction, in the blue, students who also received Tier 2 intervention, in the green, and students who received Tier 3 intervention, in the yellow. We will come back and revisit this graphic with each tier, but for now, let's note that our Tier 1 instruction has helped to ensure that our average growth for students at all grade levels was met and in many places exceeded our set expectations.
Next, we'll speak about Tier 2 instruction, and this year, through frequent routine collaboration and consultation with the Director of Teaching and Learning, Jen Clifford, elementary principals and the Special Education Literacy Specialist, Annie, and the Elementary Literacy Intervention Specialist, Rebecca, Annie has continued to evolve the foundational Tier 2 structures that were established last year. Overall, the literacy department has been busy improving and strengthening the intervention model in its 2nd year of implementation.
In looking at the evolution of literacy assessments, we've continued to use the DIBELS 8 for kindergarten through 5th grade and the Early Bird Screener in grades K and 1 as our primary data points, tracked 3 times per year. These screeners give us a comprehensive snapshot of each individual student at the beginning, middle, and end of the school year. The data that's collected using these screeners informs our administration of subsequent diagnostic assessments that in turn help to drive our intervention. Results gathered from the Quick Phonics Screener, the QPS, the Phonological Awareness Screener Test, the PAST, and the Hegarty Phonological Awareness Assessment allow the literacy intervention team to interpret individual student strengths and areas of need, pinpointing the exact skills to target during intervention. The literacy department has also increased the frequency of progress monitoring data collection. Collecting 1 measure each month from all students in grade 1 through 5 who are receiving intervention has better enabled us to gauge the effectiveness of that intervention. This monthly data allowed us to track individual student growth trajectories this year and make more informed decisions about the instructional needs of each student, as well as the response to the current instruction. All DIBELS data, benchmark, and progress monitoring scores are inputted and stored in the Amplify database system. Alongside a variety of other helpful reports, we have primarily used the student progress monitoring graph to assess whether student achievement is aligned with the individual progress trajectory, plotted from the student's first data point of the school year to the last. This graph, along with the increase in progress monitoring data collection, has been an instrumental tool in evaluating progress over time and ensuring that all students are optimally responding to the level of support that they are receiving. From all the data we've collected this year and last, we've been able to determine the major skill areas in which most students require remediation across each grade level. Our intervention lesson plans have continued to follow an Orton-Gillingham approach, including a comprehensive agenda of foundational literacy activities and skills to strengthen automatic phonological awareness, decoding, word recognition, and fluency skills. This year, a theme of automaticity and fluency had evolved after studying our first round of data in the fall. We noticed a need for more automatic sound symbol retrieval and decoding in the younger grades, as well as a need for improved reading rates in the upper grades. Consequently, much of our training and professional development has focused on these domains of reading.
Through monthly data collection, we've been able to make adjustments to our frequency and duration and group size of intervention groups to better match the evolving needs of our students. This graph shows the intensity of interventions across grade levels within the third term. The red bars show the number of students receiving intensive intervention, yellow bars show moderate, and the green bars show low need. Note that this is all students that are within that Tier 2 band. So this is not that Tier 3 piece that we'll talk about later. Research has shown repeatedly how important it is to provide intervention early. We know that the earlier we can intervene, the more likely students are to reach proficiency for foundational literacy skills. Thinking back to the composite scores, so much green and blue at the kindergarten level was directly related to the amount of intensive intervention that we were able to provide here. Overall, students receiving intervention have grown at an exciting pace this year. They are represented by the green line on the chart. Our goal for students who receive intervention is to make comparable growth with their peers, the blue lines. At least 8 months of growth was expected for all students this school year, October to May. Kindergarten students receiving intervention made an average of 9.3 months of growth. Grade 1 students receiving intervention made an average of 8.9 months. Grade 2 students, 9.4. Grade 3 students, 9 months of growth. Grade 4 and 5, an average of 8.5 months. Through numeric data analysis alongside anecdotal observations and data, preliminary numbers next September show that 53 students will no longer require literacy intervention at the start of the school year. More beginning of year data will be collected again at the end of September, and the number of students requiring intervention will likely change. But right now, we are celebrating the success of our students.
This year, in the role of Special Education Literacy Specialist, Rebecca Butler worked closely with the elementary principals, the Director of Teaching and Learning, and the Elementary Literacy Specialist, Annie Drews, and the Elementary Special Education Coordinator, Maureen Smith, and the special education teachers across the 3 elementary schools to more closely align special education practices with regard to assessment and instruction. During our Wednesday PD, Maureen Smith and Rebecca had the opportunity to facilitate discussions with special education teachers around academic achievement evaluations, benchmark assessments, and reading instruction. Through these professional development meetings, they were able to collect and synthesize the information and feedback and create shared resources to align our practices and guide our future work.
These are some examples of how we've worked together to align special education across the 3 elementary schools. With regard to formal academic achievement evaluations, a resource document was created for teachers outlining academic achievement evaluation tools available by evaluation area, including language, reading, writing, math, etc. The resource also outlines expectations for evaluations by grade level to make academic achievement evaluation more efficient and targeted. Academic achievement evaluation report templates were created for special education's teachers to align our reporting practices across the schools. Agreements about benchmark assessments for reading to be completed 3 times per year were updated. In doing this, some of the diagnostic benchmark assessments were aligned with the Tier 2 literacy intervention assessments, including the Phonological Awareness Test and the Quick Phonics Screener 3. Special education teachers also began using DIBELS for progress monitoring, aligning with Tier 1 and Tier 2. With regard to our reading instruction, most, if not all, of our special education teachers in district have some level of Orton-Gillingham training or certification. Orton-Gillingham, or OG, is an instructional approach to teaching reading that is diagnostic and prescriptive. Reading instruction using this approach is explicit, structured, systematic, and multisensory. In an effort to streamline our instruction across grade levels and schools, an OG scope and sequence for our district was created as a guideline for all special education teachers. As the OG approach is diagnostic, there is flexibility in the sequence of instruction based on individual student needs. This scope and sequence aligns to the scope and sequence used in the Tier 2 literacy interventions as well. Rebecca Butler also has provided professional development throughout the year to all elementary level moderate special education teaching assistants in the science of reading over the course of 6 sessions. Topics included the simple view of reading and Scarborough's reading rope, reading subtypes and dyslexia, structured literacy, phonological awareness, the alphabetic principle, phonics, and spelling. This training was similar to the training that literacy interventionists received last year and has been incredibly well received by our teaching assistants, and just empowering them with the knowledge has allowed them to better help students within the classroom. So, thank you.
So coming back to this chart for Tier 3, we see in the graph the growth of students on IEPs receiving Tier 3 interventions on the DIBELS was equal to or greater than the growth of Tier 1 and Tier 2 students in grades 1 through 5. In grades 2 through 5, students who received Tier 3 intervention had more growth than students who received only Tier 1. This is great, as it shows that those students are not just progressing, but they are closing the gap. In first grade, the growth was similar between students receiving Tier 3 intervention versus just Tier 1 instruction. And in kindergarten, the number of students on IEPs with reading support is very low. Typically, those IEPs in kindergarten are built around social skills. So the bar representing this is really just a small number of kids and is a really hard number to use for comparison. We wanted to leave it in here, but it's such a small group that its meaning is kind of funky.
So looking back at the MTSS graphic, we've walked through the 3 tiers. You can also see 3 drivers: competency, leadership, and implementation drivers that work to frame the entire system. Leadership drivers include scheduling, resource allocations, creating an inclusive culture and climate to engage all stakeholders in the work. Effective leadership requires the addressing of adaptive issues, identifying and removing barriers, combined with technical support, such as finding time and resources. Implementation drivers are designed to create organizational systems that meet the needs of all students, such as the use of evidence-based practices, ensuring standards-based instruction for all students, and creating a robust assessment framework that aligns with the overall tiered system of support. Competency drivers revolved around building our capacity to affect positive student outcomes through thoughtful staffing models, high-quality PD models, research-based coaching models and strategies, and development of fidelity assessments and feedback loops to monitor progress and effectiveness. Our work this year has encompassed all 3 sets of these drivers. And this is where our previous roadmap picks up. In thinking about those 3 sets of drivers, we're using all 3 of them to move forward. This year, a small group of teachers and Carolyn participated in DESE's Lead for Literacy program, which enabled us to document our work in the areas of literacy instruction, assessment, professional learning, goals, and communication. This group determined that next year we will focus on creating a master schedule in each building, which includes intervention blocks at each grade level and collaboration time among all instructional team members, which includes frequent data discussions. That's one of those leadership drivers. The group also determined the need to comprehensively review curriculum-based assessments in order to triangulate data to better meet the needs of all students, and also helped us conclude that caregiver communication will be a goal for next year. This year, we sent home benchmark assessment information for the first time. We're working on how to best support families to be able to understand and use this information. I think it's important to note that actually by regulation next year, all schools are required to communicate with families in kindergarten through 3rd grade around literacy screening. We jumped ahead a little bit and tried to kind of get into that process this year and be really transparent. We learned a lot about our communications, and we're trying to evolve them and to be even more strong. We're also planning on updating our literacy section in the elementary report card section this summer to become a standards-based report card area in that section of the report card is not standards-based. Our math section is very standards-based, but ironically, the literacy section is not. So we want to go back and do that work so that we're really better matching the skills that we're teaching and measuring for our students. And those are all implementation drivers. A team has also strengthened our instructional support team process, the pre-referral process, utilizing new forms and protocols that include caregiver input and was created with a trauma-informed approach. The initial feedback from teachers using that process is that the new protocols have created a well-rounded picture of students' performances, therefore making stronger decisions about how to best support students who are struggling. And lastly, around the competency drivers, professional development this year has been targeted to strengthen not only the implementation of our new high-quality instructional materials. We had CKLA trainers come to the district 3 different times this year to train teachers specifically within the program, but we also included offerings that help teachers continue to build their understanding around the science of reading. Kindergarten teachers undertook trainings using sound walls in their classrooms about how the sounds are formed in our mouth. I don't know if you've seen those in any of the classrooms. They're actually pictures of the mouth and the sounds that go with them so that kids are learning to make the sounds of the letters accurately early on. Numerous staff has taken advantage of multiple literacy offerings at Landmark Outreach. This is the 3rd summer that we are running our own section of a Landmark class, and we have probably at least 20, if not more, other educators actually at all levels of the district taking advantage of summer professional development through Landmark. And our teaching assistants all benefited from the expertise and trainings provided all year by Annie and Rebecca. We'll continue to ensure that we have strong leadership, competency, and implementation drivers that are built on a framework to ensure equitable access for all. We want to recognize and celebrate the learning that both our students and teachers have taken on this year. We're so pleased with the growth that we see across the district. And each day, we're amazed with the learning that's taking place in our classrooms. The success of our Tier 2 intervention model and as well as gains in our Tier 3 model are a credit to our teachers across all grade levels, our dedicated teaching assistants, and the leadership that Annie and Rebecca have provided over the past 2 years. This has been a year of new challenges, but our teachers have faced each roadblock and persevered for the benefit of our students. We know we still have work to do, but we're so pleased with what we've accomplished so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That was a lot of work. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm gonna throw it out to the committee. Does anyone have questions? I suspect, Jen, why don't we start with you?
Can we start with slide 8?
Sure. Now we
Yeah, I
can-
had a question on slide 8 too.
For the composite scores?
So,
Jen, can you make sure to talk into the mic so that,
looking at just the end numbers, so that last row, we've got like basically 36% in the 4th grade and 27%, I'm adding red and yellow here,
Yeah.
who at the end of the year aren't meeting their benchmarks, is that correct?
That is. Do you want to pull up the other slide that we had? We actually want to look at this. Can we look at this graphic from this year and from last year? We talked about this last year.
Absolutely.
And we thought it might be helpful to pull up both pieces.
Visual real estate.
So I wanted to pull this up because, so at the top is last year's DIBELS data, the composite. So kindergarten through 5th grade from last year versus this year. And you know what? We had this conversation last year, if you recall. We were looking at the 4th and 5th grade because they had similar numbers. And we have some similar circumstances. We have a high number of students identified with learning disabilities in 4th and 5th grade right now, currently in our district. Last year, I know we had kids in the double digits that were in specialized programs, and we have similar numbers this year. We also know that we learned this last year when we looked at the 4th grade data. Do you see this dip that goes from the middle of the year to the end of the year? We saw something similar happen this year.
Yeah.
And what we've realized, I don't have the numbers with me, I meant to. We have passages that students are reading, and at the beginning of the year, I want to say it's a 4.0, and the middle of the year is a 4.2. I do have this committed to memory. So, meaning that it's an early fourth grade passage at the beginning of the year, that makes sense. Middle of the year, it's actually a 4.2, which is just a fourth grade second month reading level passage, which is actually kind of low, and I think gives us a false sense of security, because the end of the year is 5.0, is a 5.0 level. It's a big jump. So we don't know why that happens. It's a nationally normed test. It's just something that we saw in the data here last year, and it happened again. So one of the things that we're doing, that this happened last year and we looked at it, we decided to progress monitor students. So if any students went down into the yellow, say they've been green all year and all of a sudden we're yellow, their teachers or the teaching assistants are doing another passage, they're doing another set of this assessment with those students now in June, so that when we send those parent reports home, they just get printed off, I believe, this week. Those marks will be on the reports as well. Want to add anything to that? No, I think we saw that. We know that. We also know that these kids, as they get older, they haven't had those foundational pieces.
Exactly.
So a different report or a different presentation would be all the work that we're starting to do at middle school and at
That was going to be
secondary.
my question. Are we following these students then, since we know there's an issue,
We are.
into middle school?
Yeah, so we brought Dibbles into the middle school this year for the first time. So that's a big learning curve for those teachers that will say, you know what, I know how to teach middle school English, but I've never taught students how to read before. So there's a big learning curve. So we have some really dynamic middle school teachers who are learning about reading. They're learning about the assessment process. They're learning about interventions. And we have a fantastic principal at the middle school who's recognized the need for common intervention blocks, not just for some students, but for all students to have access to an intervention block. So Zach has been working on restructuring not only his schedule next year, but also bringing in resources to be able to do that. And, spoiler alert, we're also looking at high-quality instructional materials at the middle school level. We're exploring what resources, because right now in 6 through 12, we have teacher-created resources, much like we used to have at elementary, and teachers are realizing it's incredibly difficult to meet all the needs of the students right now. It's exhausting to rely on their expertise, so we're looking at what other resources we can bring in. So all of the things we've done in elementary, we're bringing into secondary in a different way.
Nice. Does anybody else have any questions? 'Cause I've got a couple more.
I think there are, but why don't we keep,
That-
you
that
keep
was-
going, and then I think we've got a couple other people with questions.
Okay, slide, sorry, 9. What, you're saying months of growth, but I'm just unclear, what does that mean? Does it mean like a certain percentage increase? How's that, like, how are you determining whether a student is growing or not?
So that's looking, so this is it's a metric that's computed by the software that we use. And so based on the instruction, we expect kids to make what is considered 8 months of growth from wherever they start to wherever they end. And that everybody was able to go beyond that, which is fantastic. And in a lot of cases, our students on IEPs were making even more growth than students
no,
on
it's
not,
great.
which is even greater news.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what that growth thing actually meant. And,
All different at all grade levels, because each test is weighted differently by the subtest. So we're looking at it holistically of how much do kids grow, and do they grow as comparable to their peers? And if they're not growing, then that's when we're using those diagnostic assessments to look even further into what's going on with them and how do we target their instruction and tailor it even more to their needs.
and my last question, it's okay to say you don't know, because it's a different kind of analysis than I would have expected you to do. But are we seeing the same pattern on our MCAS results for the higher grades as we are on our DIBELS? Like, how closely are those aligned
I
at all?
haven't correlated that. I think that's work. I will say honestly, for the first time this year, Eric and Ben were with me. I said, I can't wait to see our MCAS scores. In 25 years, I've never said that as an educator. But some of the writing that we've seen students completing in their class, I was specifically in a 5th grade classroom with them when I said that, just seeing some of the different types of writing that students are engaging in and what they're able to produce is really exciting. I'm also going to say MCAS has looked really different and wonky over the past few years.
That's why I was
So it's
wondering
like
if we're seeing the same
comparing-
pattern.
It's not even apples and oranges. It's like bananas and grapes, and like it's really hard. And even our growth percentiles in MCAS are different this year than they were previously. So until we get back into more of a routine with MCAS, it's really hard to put those two things together.
Okay,
We do know, though, that our MCAS data in the past has shown that we've had 20 to 30% of students through 8th grade that are not meeting expectations, fully meeting expectations in English language arts. So we're hopeful. Can we go back to that composite graph? We're really excited, and we just want to call out, like, look at the red and yellow in these grades.
I know, it's great.
And these are kids, some of these kids didn't have typical preschool experience or, socialization experiences, those younger kids, and so they are learning how to be students in school. They're learning a lot of those social lessons, and they're also learning really high levels of literacy skills right now in our classrooms. So the future's bright. We've got some work to do. But we also have, I don't know if we highlight this enough, the knowledge that kids are learning. When the student was explaining some of the highlights of at Winthrop in the high school, we had 5th graders from Winthrop who had learned about the Reformation that paralleled the history in 9th grade. And so the 9th grade students ran a morning workshop with the 5th grade students. And so there were connections being made. So I keep saying to secondary teachers, just wait a few years, kids are gonna come and know so much more because we weren't teaching students these topics in the past.
Just for future reference, I really liked the slide showing the year by year, because it's nice, because if I've got the 2021 and 2022 data right side by side, I can look, okay, my 3rd graders last year that are now 4th graders, how are they comparing to one another? So that was nice. So, thank you.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I certainly have the same questions about slide 8, but to what degree are you weaving in the parents into and educating them on best practices to support what you're trying to do? With the social media is competing for their kids' time at home. In our family, many moons ago, my wife threw out all the televisions because they were destroying our children's reading, and that was transformational. But I wonder what best practices that you've identified and what has been passed along in any systematic kind of way to parents to support what you're doing.
Yeah. So you might recall towards the end I was saying caregiver communication is one of the goals for next year, so really thinking about how we proactively communicate with parents. I know that classroom teachers were sharing unit information for each CKLA unit with parents that kind of gave an overview of what was happening in the classroom and how it could be supported at home. Annie and Rebecca also did a parent presentation a few times for parents around supporting students' early reading skills. So we're just trying to build some resources and really think about that. It's specifically tapping into caregivers and how we can enlist them in this work and really help build those bridges is one of the goals for next year.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We also, at Bucher, we piloted a parent workshop, really looking at the nuts and bolts of the science of reading, which went really well, something that we'd like to continue to do. And a lot of the conversations with families at the end of the year, particularly in the lower grades, sort of centers around what are some things that those families can do over the summer for their kids specifically to support them during those couple of months when they're not with us.
Thank you.
Julia?
Can I add, and then I do have a question. I think it's so helpful. My son's in 2nd grade. I know most of you know that, at Bucher, but he gets these worksheets that come home with him that say, here's what you're learning about, just to refresh your memory in case I don't remember the War of 1812, And here's what he's learning, and here are some things to talk about at home, and here's some additional resources. So I think that's incredibly helpful for me to not have to, pick his brain and figure out what he's learning about and then go research on my own. I think that is incredibly helpful. So thank you. So my question is, this is the 2nd year and it's a 5 to 7 year program. And then what happens after that, I guess?
So building an MTSS probably takes, let's say, 7 years.
Yeah.
We're 2 years into it. So we've only had this curriculum for 1 year. We've only been doing DIBELS in this way for the 2nd year, right? We did it, the way we're doing it. So and you remember this all came out of a restructure of our literacy model, but to be honest, our tiers were upside down, right? Like that triangle where you think about tier 1 instruction for all students. We ended up in a place where we had so many kids that were in need of tier 2 and tier 3, and we didn't have a solid foundation for tier 1. So we feel like we've righted that triangle. We've put all the same resources as a foundation in each classroom. And it's going to take us a few years. What happens after 7 years? Hopefully, we've got strong resources and practices that are supporting students who are reading and are responsive, but we're starting a math curriculum review process next year. So we're also bringing in other subjects into the MTSS system as we continue to build it and extend it into middle and high school.
Other questions? I just had one quick question, and I don't know who this is for, but how challenging has it been to collect all this data? I guess there's a challenging question, but there's also a time question. Like, I'm wondering about just how much time it takes from our teachers, but also how much time it takes from the students, the data collection itself.
So doing the assessments themselves, we usually have about a 2-week, 10-day window to complete the assessments so every student within a certain grade, within a grade level has the assessment within that time frame. And teachers do it differently. So some teachers might do a few students each day. They also might ask for support from their curriculum coach or a teaching assistant to support the classroom so they can do a lot of them in a day. There's lots of different ways that it happens, but it's generally these assessment windows are about 2 weeks, 3 times a year. Then the data needs to be input into the system, which I think has been a smoother process this year. But one of the things you may not see in that data collection is all of the consultation and documentation of interventions that Annie and the teaching assistants are doing. So we have a new tool this year, Panorama, where we're really we had to try different ways to collect that information and those types of data points around what's happening in those interventions and what's working and what's a struggle for students. So there's a ton of time to collect data, but we're also trying to use it. The teaching assistants are doing diagnostic assessments and looking at those results with Annie, and so we're trying to be careful about making sure that any data that we're collecting is being used to make decisions, so that it's not just collecting it for the sake of collecting it.
That's part of my concern, right? First of all, I just want to say this is a wonderful presentation, and I think it's what, I don't want to speak for everyone, but we've been looking for this, and it's really helpful, and it was very clear, and we do want tons of data, but I just wanted, it sounds like a lot, and I don't know how to balance that.
Part of what we're doing right now is also seeing what data do we have and what's most useful. So we mentioned Early Bird Screener. We have benefited from grant funding for the past few years of this software that's a screening program. It's actually really exciting. It's based out of Boston. It's based on research. It's interactive, taken on an iPad. It was designed last year for kindergartners. They extended it into first grade this year. We use that as it's a really comprehensive tool, but we realized that we don't need it in first grade. So we're trying to make decisions about, okay, we're going to still continue to do this in kindergarten because it gives us a wide variety, without running through all the benchmark assessments that a special education teacher would do for a student. We have some of those data points very clearly with this screener that we can use with all students. But we also realized we don't need to repeat that again in first grade. We weren't getting enough out of repeating it for a second year. So we're trying to, and we're also looking at the curriculum-based assessments. So we've never had curriculum-based assessments where CKLA has beginning, middle, and end of year unit assessments. So that's some of the work we've done this year too, is to look at where do those assessments fall, what are they assessing, is it different than our benchmark assessments and our screening tools, and how do we make decisions about how those things get completed. Teachers this year are doing end of year assessments, and we've set aside time during the PD days when we come back in August for teachers to have information for each student who's coming into their classroom. They're gonna have a cover sheet around what those students' literacy skills look like right now in June before they even meet the students. They'll get to see some of their work, and hopefully it's really informative. And you know what, if it's not, then we'll think about how we do it differently next year.
Thank you.
You had asked about the impact on individual students. The DIBELS screener is, one of the important pieces around it is fluency and automaticity. So each of those subtests are all limited to 60 seconds. So a kid might do 3 or 4 different subtests, but we're really talking about 4 minutes worth of time before they're back doing their regular curriculum.
Great, that's helpful, thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
The other piece too, Dana, you asked about the data and what are we doing with it. So we also run data meetings 3 times a year where we are sitting down and looking closely at the data and making decisions about kids that are going to require some additional support in Tier 2. And this year, we've separated out our ELA data meetings from our math data meetings, so we had some time to really dedicate to math and really look at that. So I want to assure you that we're not just collecting the data and it's going into Amplify and there it is, and we put it on a slide, but we're really digging into it and looking at it carefully and making some good instructional decisions around it.
Great.
Oh, yeah, and the data that gets entered into Amplify CKLA, Amplify, Dibbles Amplify, we have too many amplifies. There are so many different reports that we can run that give us these kinds of scores. We can run individual student progress reports, we can run composite reports for classes. Administrators can look at whole school reports, Jen can look at district reports, so it's a really, really powerful tool once we get the data into it.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, please.
I think it's really important to remind everybody here, if you go back to my entry plan report, this was one of the big things that came out as we did walkthroughs and we talked to different people about that kind of fidelity in our curriculum. Back then, it was a mishmash of whatever teachers thought they needed to make at that particular time for a particular lesson. So in say, grade 1 at each school, you would see totally different things happening at the same time of the year. So there weren't those common conversations. There weren't these meetings to discuss data. There weren't meetings to discuss even opportunities for kids to move forward or looking at interventions. Changing the triangle, flipping that triangle over was a big deal because we had far fewer kids leaving the classroom for intervention, whereas before this model was put into place, interventions were pull out and they could be for a long period of time and a child might miss something else in their class that they're pulled out of. So you're seeing a very different model that's been developed and grown literally, I think, in a very short amount of time, given what the work that we've already done. I think, you know, the 6th year, our coaches and our teachers have really pulled off an amazing project for us to be able to now say, we know where our kids are, we know where they can be, we know where they're going, we can track them longitudinally, and as we grow up through the middle high school, we'll be able to continue that through so that we have that long-term vertical look at kids along the way, and this is huge. This data gives us so many opportunities for discussions. It does grade level discussions, data meetings, larger scale with this group, you know, things that might need to be changed, and then even going back to teachers and talking about, okay, what did you notice in this first year of CKLA through the year? And there are things that teachers notice that I think this group knows that they'll work on changing in the future. I think the connection to special education was huge. That's a piece that I think everybody forgets about. Special education services in the past are generally done somewhere else, and realistically, the change has allowed us to push that back in and also align the special ed staff with the same type of skill set and ideas and understandings about the science of reading. So kudos to this team and the other people that are not here that are part of their team for making this happen in what I consider an extremely short amount of time, and also showing an extreme level of success for our kids at a time when everybody in the state was saying, what about learning loss? What about learning loss? Well, CKLA was a challenge. I remember back in September when teachers were like, I don't know if I can do this. There was a lot of anxiety in classrooms, and now teachers are like, this is unbelievable. We pushed our kids, we pushed ourselves, and we really got to a place that we didn't know we could be. Been in kindergarten classes in several of the schools, and teachers all report the same thing. Like, I can't believe the words and the sentences that these kids are making in my kindergarten class. This has never happened before. You talk to parents outside, I can't believe the conversations I'm having with my kid at the dinner table. It could be something, you know, like the nervous system, which is kind of my fondest memory in a first grade classroom of my first dip into what's going on with CKLA. But it was amazing what these kids knew and understood and could actually create something related to the lessons and things that they were learning. So I really, there's not enough thank yous to go around to be able to say the work, to be able to kind of hold up this group. I can't hold them high enough. They've done a lot of work in a very short amount of time, and certainly proud of the group and the teachers and the work that we've done as a district. And I look forward to continuing to grow the model and change the model as we find that we need. But again, thank you all. Thank you to all of your team members and our teachers. They really have done yeoman's work to make this happen in such a short amount of time.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Again, you're all welcome to stay. But also, we understand. All right. Next up is back to you, Eric.
Back to me. Good evening. I just want to do a brief overview of our end-of-year goals report. I will not get into the depth that the group that just presented got into, but I did want to present it to the committee. We did this last year for the first time, really did a full overview of our goals. This is a similar model where we continue to connect with and develop our goals longitudinally, try to connect the dots over time. Several of our goals, as you know, have been connected together over multiple years, and you'll see that again as we develop our 23 and 24 year school year goals. And the best example, I guess, is MTSS, the structure you just learned about, as we continue to grow that. So the 4 goals for this past school year: we're building a district vision and strategic plan, improving teaching and learning through the MTSS structure, and then growing into the middle school, and then committing to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and improving learning environments. This report is the feedback from our district leadership team across all of the areas within this year's goals that we set earlier, actually late in last summer. The district vision and strategic plan, we now have a new vision, a new mission, new core beliefs, and what I think is a great strategic plan model that we can be proud of, that we can show people. And the cover of it is in the report, but you've all seen the magazine now that we're able to publish and send out to people to show what we're doing and how we're doing it. A little description of the whole plan, and then what we're doing now is really trying to make connections with the Portrait of Graduate. So even the work that was described just before me, we're starting to now take that work at the pre-K to 5 level and make that connection to the portrait. Like, what does a graduate look like, and what are the skills we want them to have? So the dots will be connected longitudinally for a long time. Improving teaching and learning, I am not gonna double up the work that you just heard, because I could never connect with it as deeply as all of they can. But similar graphics, but a little different descriptions about how things are going within our structures. I think it's good to highlight Miles River. Miles River has really jumped on. Our new principal, Dr. Best, has jumped on board. He's been working hand in hand with both Jen Clifford, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and actually Brian, the principal at the high school, Brian Menegoni, to start to look at the connections further up through the 6 through 12 zone, if you will, of our focus. So we've moved Dibbles up. We can get it all the way to 8th grade if we want to. Right now we're using it in 6th grade. We plan to go to 7th grade. We've also added iReady Math, so that's actually assessed and discussed. So we're doing the similar types of things with our iReady Math data at the middle school. We're looking at it over 3 times during the school year, doing comparatives, having discussions. These are discussions that have never happened before in our district. So if you went back 3 years ago, we were not having the level of discussion we're having about kids and how kids are doing in our classes for literacy and mathematics. They've identified some changes that they'll make at the middle school level. Specifically, Jen's working right now to develop a crosswalk with our English teachers so that there's a stronger and tighter alignment with the state standards. Right now, we found that it was similar to elementary. There were some things here, some things there, so, so kids were getting a slightly different experience depending on who they may have had for a teacher. There's a schedule adjust. They're really looking at rebuilding the entire middle school schedule so that they can better meet the needs of kids with the IE block that was mentioned. And that IE block will come into play as kids need support. So similar to that elementary school model, kids will need supports. Now we have the ability to deliver it without pulling them out of a classroom. And they'll continue doing screening as kids grow up. So we'll have 6th grade, they'll have screening for 6 to 7 as they go to 7th grade and all the way up to 8th grade. So we'll begin to continue to collect that longitudinal data. We're looking at actually curricula, the same issue as we ran into with the elementary school. There was no actual curricula model to say, we're following this. If somebody asked you, it would really be what teachers thought was the right thing to do at the time related to whatever units of instructions they developed. So depending on the grade level, the units of instruction in the grade level. So we're looking at examining how to change that and looking at some different ways to collect the data and assess the data and have similar discussions at the middle school level. And again, I think the bigger piece of it is changing scheduling, having an intervention program at the middle school, which has really not been in place. Alignment with special education, which has not really been a thing in our district, as we know, as we go back a few years. And then really trying to figure out how to help teachers to understand these changes even within their own classroom. Understanding by design, or universal design for learning, has really been the focus this year for our secondary staff. And that really means how are you creating, removing barriers for kids within your classroom, within your curriculum, to help them to kind of meet those benchmarks, if you will. So we were in the UDL, Department of Education, UDL group. There was a number of trainings that were done both at the elementary and the secondary level. Middle school really grabbed onto it. One of their teachers is actually driving that work at the secondary level and continues to push it and grow it. So I think the nice thing will be we'll have screening practices that we've never had at the middle school level. We'll have the opportunity to kind of follow kids now as this 5th grade group moves up. We already have some data on them. We have 2 years worth of data on them. Then we can be able to add that 3rd year and then start to tailor the interventions more cleanly and more closely. So that's been the middle school work. High school took a different approach. High school is a little bit different because of the idea of their content being so spread out. All of a sudden it's geometry and algebra, and so there is no real one assessment you can say, this is the assessment we want to use. So they're looking at it from the perspective of grade levels. Brian and his staff was able to create 2 teams, the 9th grade and 10th grade teams. And these teachers, along with a number of TAs, have worked together to take advantage of a power block for intervention, so that they've used Panorama, they've developed these long-term interventions. So they have someone that meets with a child who's struggling based on either information from teachers, report card grades, test grades, assessment grades, special ed data, et cetera. And the TA will be able to kind of put them into the Panorama system with a set of goals and then assign somebody to them to continue to check in. So there's a constant check-in model, they call it the elementary school progress monitoring. They're doing a similar thing at the high school level now for both 9th and 10th grade. And seeing some progress with that as well. You're starting to see a shift in this little chart is just taken from Panorama. It really shows that 92% of the kids in that 9th and 10th grade group are in Tier 1. Which is actually right where we want them. And there's always a smaller group in Tier 2 and an even smaller group in Tier 3 that needs some serious intervention. So the numbers look good so far. They've also developed the After School Academy, which you approved in the budget 2 years ago. And they're really getting the executive functioning piece, the organizational piece, which we find in high school is missing with a whole bunch of kids. They'll come to the high school, and we've all seen it. It was probably my book bag too when I was in high school. It was like you opened it up and papers flew out and they were all crushed and folded and it didn't know where to go. So even things like that they're working on with kids in the After School Academy, and they have a counselor connected to them. They have constant communication with families, so where kids need interventions both in school and at home, they're working with families with that specific counselor. And the high school has assigned Matt Fitzgibbons to the 9th grade, but he also crosses over into 8th grade, so that he's starting that transition with the 8th grade students as they approach the high school for next year. And then really trying to figure out how it goes from there. They're looking at assessments, they're looking at using STAR Math. STAR Math is used by a number of schools in this area, and it really gives us the opportunity to screen kids and get an understanding of where they are mathematically, and you know, compare again to, we hate to compare to MCAS, but realistically, we're kind of excited right now to see where our MCAS scores go compared to the last few years, and that goes all the way up through 10th grade. So, DEIB, we continued with our DEIB practices. We did a little bit different this year, where we had a number of opportunities for teachers to learn more about DEIB, excuse me, with book groups. There were several book groups that were related to DEIB, where teachers took part, and they were all teacher-led as well, which we think is important. And there's a number of those books listed in there if anybody would like to read them. There are a number of interesting titles there. I was involved with The Divergent Mind, which is, if you haven't read that book, it's a fascinating book. It's about actually the female perspective of neurodiversity, and really helped me to understand some of the things that I guess I took for granted in schools and in kind of in life as well. So it's a good read for people. We have a DEIB advisory committee. They broke themselves into subgroups so that they could better target our DEIB work. We brought in several groups with our DEIB group that were specific to learning about neurodiversity. So one of the groups, and I'm sorry the name is escaping me, that we brought in, AANE, the autism panel, for AANE, were adults with autism who were able to sit in front of our staff and say, here's what it was like for me in school. Here's what it's like for me now in my life, and here's where I had to figure out ways to navigate. So here are some things, this is the fascinating part, here are some things you can do for your kids to be able to help with that. So I think that was important as we went through this entire process. And it was good to really turn that. I think that DEIB, people assume automatically that you're dealing with race. In our school district, you know, there are a number of increases in students of different color, and I think it's an amazing transition for us as a district, but we also want to be able to focus on the entire spectrum of kids that we have within our school district, whether they have neurodiversity, are kids of color, or kids are, you know, the LGBTQ group, so that this encompasses so many different groups of kids, this work. And I think it's important to understand that even the state has realized it, and they've changed the teacher evaluation process, and now next year the principal evaluation process, to involve much more of a focus on cultural competence and really understanding how to help kids of different cultures in our schools to see themselves in the curriculum, or see themselves in their classroom, or see themselves in our schools. And I think that's an important growth factor for us too, as the numbers of kids of color grow in our system, really helping our teachers to understand some of the things that we learned even in our equity audit. You know, when there was information in there about how some of our Asian kids felt in classes or in specific schools. So I think that's important to continue to grow, and there's a ton of support from the state. We were involved in the Sense of Belonging Network as well as the UDL network, and that led us to getting a Safe and Supportive Schools grant earlier in the year, which gave us an opportunity to assemble a team to start to look at, from each school level, some of the things that we can do to continue to improve our schools to make them safe and supportive for everyone. And then the improving learning environments, I give Tom kudos for sticking with his script, because he really built this. I don't know if you remember this from last year. Renew, improve, reduce, and welcome. And I think when you look at this section of the report, you'll see how he really broke it down into the renewal piece, the improvement piece, the reduction piece, and welcoming piece. And Of course, we have the Cutler project that has starting to grow fairly quickly, where we're moving into designer interviews right now. We've advertised, and in a couple weeks, we will start those interviews. We're in feasibility, we'll get the designer on board, and then we'll really start to see some momentum. Athletic field project goes without saying. I mean, a huge coup for us to be able to put that project on the table and get our towns to support that. Now it's really working, there's a subcommittee working with that as well to keep that moving through the rest of the permitting process, and then actually getting into the stages of starting the build in the spring of '24. He continued to try to get into the roof project. The roof documents, the statement of interest, are no longer accepted by MSBA. MSBA took the $75 million that they allotted for accelerated repair, and they moved that monies to the actual building projects, because we've seen across the state is there are a number of communities who started the building project, say, at $75 million, and it ended up at 102 by the time they were done. So communities were really on the hook for a lot more money than they originally had approved or passed. So the state has seen that and understands that, and starting to just kind of move some of their funding around. And then we have in the budget earmarked for a science lab study for next year. We voted that this past budget group. We're doing some asbestos flooring removal. We do a few rooms every year. They're quite expensive. They run between $10,000 and $15,000 a room. So we put a few in the budget every year, and we continue to do removals in some of the areas where we notice any breakage whatsoever. We target those first. And then we'll have continued look at asbestos across the district, excuse me, including our HERA report that was updated this year for asbestos across the district. Changing the way we're cleaning our elementary schools, moving to a more teen model. I mean, if you work in an elementary school and you're the night custodian, you are the lone person in the building all night unless you hear a ghost. I mean, realistically, if someone knocks on the door or window, you're by yourself. But the idea for us is to start to bring the 3 people together and move them around to do each of the buildings together. So there's a little bit of a sense of camaraderie and collaboration, and kind of, okay, it's kind of fun to go to work. I have some people to work with and talk to throughout the night. And then we continue to recondition hardware across the district, recondition windows and doors. We had to replace a couple doors at the high school. We've had to replace windows and hardware in several of the elementary schools, just from age and time. And then Tom was involved with Juliana Schneider, the principal over at the Cutler, who she launched along with her kids and her staff, the composting program. They piloted it over there, so that we're looking at bringing that across the district for next school year. They did a nice job. They piloted it, they got all kind of the kinks worked out, got the kids involved, and then it grew from there. Still looking at solar and performance contracting. We're really trying to figure out different ways to meet needs, like the MSBA project for the Cutler School. We're looking at, again, LEED certified and any green programs that we're available to gain from. We do have other solar opportunities that have been brought out there from Vicki Massoni and her group, including the installation of 4 different charging stations, 2 here, Central Office Bucher location, and 1 at the middle school, high school, 2 at the middle high school location. So we're looking at still exploring what's going on out there with renewables and with some of the solar opportunities that are coming up through the House budget. We'll see what survives in the actual budget. It was originally $100 million set aside that may be used across the state, but we're not sure what will survive. And then the welcoming section, I think all of you were here when you heard the civics presentation by the 2 students for feminine hygiene products. Tom has been able to help them to launch that and make it happen. We have earmarked funding for ADA compliance to have a review in the various schools, and then those tasks, whatever we find out of compliance, will be added to our future capital planning. And then realistically, I think it's important to note that, again, for a second year in a row, our staff has done amazing work. We're seeing tremendous progress within our classrooms. You know, as I always say, I'm a high school guy, and for me to go into an elementary school and recognize anything unusual is, you know, other than the chairs are much smaller than I should be sitting in, is really a big deal. You know, I can go into an elementary school classroom compared to a year ago and notice the differences and see the changes in kids and see that excitement in kids in classrooms. You know, when I go into a classroom and a teacher says, I want to show you what my kids wrote, that's awesome, and that's what we're seeing across the district. So kudos to our staff, our teachers, and our team that was here presenting earlier. There's been a ton of work doing that. And then we'll continue to look at other opportunities as we build our 23-24 goal set that we'll bring to you next meeting. And certainly take any questions on this. It's just really an overview of how we met our goals.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do people have questions? Julia, go ahead.
Do you feel like there's still a lot of initiative fatigue with the leadership team and the teachers and everything going on?
Not like it was 2 years ago. You know, that was one of the commitments I made to the staff at the beginning of the school year when I spoke to them on the first day of school. Was like, we're really thinking hard about keeping the initiative. So the goals are connecting through the years. MTSS goal is the best example. That doesn't really change. It evolves, but we're still focused on that goal. And then the DEIB work those are really the two main areas of focus that we had this year. There are separate teams working kind of on the building stuff and working on the, you know, the secondary transition changes and things like that. So we try to take a lot of that off the teachers, and I think what you'll find next year as elementary now goes into their second year with this new literacy curriculum, the angst comes down even more because now they've been through it, they understand it, they know where they can make adjustments, and then you know, that will continue to taper down as we move forward with the curriculum. I think the spiraling of the curriculum is important for that as well. So when you put a new curriculum in, those connections that happen as kids transition through. So it'll be fun to watch the kindergarten kids go through all 5 years and to see where they are. It should be pretty dramatic.
Would it be possible to do some of the open houses for the middle school and the high school earlier in the spring? Because by the time they were held in May, the private schools had asked for deposits and commitments.
Yeah, we can just run it by the principals, yeah. They plan it with their school councils, so I will run it by them. Yeah, we've done them as early as November and December, but we didn't get a lot of we didn't get a lot of people showing up, so I think they were just trying to figure out best time to target. So I'll run it by them. We'll bring it up with the leadership team.
Other questions?
I know you were looking at this. Have we worked out what the total cost for 100% removal of the rest of the asbestos is?
No, not at this time. No, I know. I think Tom's going to have to bring in a number of consultants to do that. So I think you'll see that work start this year. I don't know that it's a thing. I don't know that we could do it all at once. No. Just given time, because the buildings have to be completely evacuated. They have to be set up for negative airspace. There's a time period you can't enter the space. The removal happens. There's another time period you can't enter the space. Meanwhile, we have 8 weeks, a little less than 8 weeks, to get the buildings ready for the next school year. So it's really dependent on how to come up with a plan to do those in each of the buildings where it's needed.
Do you know, off the top of your head, roughly how many classrooms or how many rooms have asbestos left? Off
the top of my head, no.
Okay.
No, but I can get the number. I mean, we do have it in the AHERA plan. We know where, like, classrooms, you can tell mostly by the size of the tiles. The old 9x9 tiles are generally asbestos. Those are the ones that are easier to be able to say, okay, I know where they are. And then tracking, Tom tracks which rooms have been updated and changed out through the years. So we can get a number. We should be able to.
Yeah, there's a report linked in the goals that has a link to our website, actually, where you can see each building, and it's like room by room, what condition everything's in. It's pretty,
That's the one we just had. That's the one we just had done.
Yeah.
So that gives us probably the closest. But I know Tom has a number scheduled for this summer as well, just like we do every summer. So those would come off of that list, so.
Pretty impressive.
I know that asbestos flooring, as long as it's intact and in good condition, is not considered hazardous.
Correct.
Do we have any asbestos flooring that is not in good condition and is considered hazardous?
No, we would actually have it removed. So we're able to, if, the best example is the rolly chairs that teachers use with the rolling wheels. They tend to be the ones that are in the same spot over and over and over, so they'll crack the tiles. We can remove like 1 or 2 tiles that are broken up and replace them. But once you get into a bigger area, we bring in an asbestos. We did it in the middle of a year once just because we had to. The whole room got a crack across it. So anywhere kids walked, as you know, it's brittle, it's super brittle. So once it breaks, it just starts to go like a puzzle. Yeah, so we tend to move on it pretty quickly. It's not something we want to wait on. It does happen in the middle of the school year though. It happens probably 3 or 4 times a year where something cracks or breaks or shifts.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay. Next up is the superintendent summative evaluation, and I am gonna turn it over to you, David.
Sure. Excuse me, I did not bring my Mac today, so I can't put it up on the
Project it?
board.
I can do it. We can see.
It needs to be bigger.
One thing I did not include that I actually ended up doing at one point was making a word cloud. I actually took everybody's reports and actually made a word cloud, and I'll share that out with you guys. Why I did that, I don't know. I just sort of needed a break from running all the numbers and everything, I think. Excuse me.
I can actually hear you, but I want to make sure.
Yeah,
everybody
no, I
can.
was just going to
Yeah.
move it closer.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just start quickly by, okay, don't close. There we go. Just sort of going over how I ended up compiling the reports. I just created a spreadsheet, like I said, I've done in the past, and how I would do it again. Excuse me. Marked everything from 1 through 5, where a few of them have a 5-point scale, and then 1 through 4 on the other scales, and just took an average, and just like when averaging anything else, anything over like a 0.5, I rounded up, and everything below that, I stayed the same. I think I only ended up rounding up twice, I think. It looks like 3 times. That number, excuse me, that spreadsheet is in the total package that I shared originally. Apparently, some of the pages has got mixed up because it's the entire bundle with everybody's reports underneath the cumulative report. So that is all available. I think we just ended up sharing just the cumulative report with everybody yesterday.
Right.
just-
I did share with the committee all the document that had all of the reports, but
Okay.
we just posted the cumulative since
All
that's
right.
what we'll vote on.
So, yeah, so that's why everybody should have access to everything at this point. And so just, moving on, excuse me, here we are. I'm just going to go down reading through the whole thing. I tried to grab a statement or two out of everybody's everybody's individual reports and add it in to make sure that all the voices were there. And I think I do have the wrong one open. And it appears I have the wrong one open on my.
You want to go old school, David?
I've got,
I
I do
have a
have
copy.
it. So, awesome. I forgot to do this.
Dana, When you get a chance, can you resend that? Because I don't have it,
Really?
really.
Did other people get that?
I got it.
Yeah, the
Oh. Huh, all right.
I
I'm-
just looked and deleted and junked and inbox and doesn't
That's
exist.
very strange. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know. Okay, I will resend.
Thank you.
There you go, now I have the right one open on my computer also. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so, step one, assess the progress towards goals, reference performance goals, check one of each goals, right? For professional practice goals, excuse me, cumulative average is met. For the student learning goals, the community average, it's going to be such a long day. Cumulative average is met and district improvement goals met. Moving down to step two, assess performance on standards. Standard one, instructional leadership, proficient. Standard two, management and operations, proficient. Standard three, family and community engagement, exemplary. And standard four, professional culture, proficient. I guess this is a great time to just remind anyone who might be watching at home that one of the biggest sort of negative feedbacks about these reports is most people don't feel that proficient is a strong enough word. But proficient is in fact a very good thing in these cases.
Can I just read right from it does say right on here, this proficient is understood to be fully satisfactory. This is the rigorous expected level of performance, rigorous being the key.
Well said.
I read it.
Okay. Step three, rate overall summative performance, and the rating is proficient. So step four is comments. As I said, this is a mix of different comments, so they're probably not going to flow together. There are some common themes. Also, in this first comment, there were a few things in some of the reports that I put here as identified areas of growth, and as we'll sort of discuss when we go through there, had we done these reports tomorrow, I think 2 or 3 of these would no longer be in there. So please take with a grain of salt. But I felt that it was important to include them. So after several years of superintendent transitions and disruptions of the worldwide pandemic, the district opened the doors to students in the fall of 2022 with an established superintendent who is knowledgeable about the district with approved district goals, with a leadership team in place and already working towards those goals. The portrait of graduate work has been completed with the strategic planning process underway. Under Mr. Tracy's leadership, the district has simultaneously focused on working effectively to provide excellent education today while laying the foundation for excellent education for decades to come in Hamilton Wenham. Under Mr. Tracy's leadership, huge progress has been made this year in improving future learning environments for the students of Hamilton Wenham, moving the district forward through the MSBA process towards a new elementary school and securing funding for decades in the making revitalization of our athletic facilities are 2 monumental accomplishments that are going to have positive implications for generations of children to come. Overall, there's a palpable energy and optimism about Hamilton Wenham Regional School District I have not felt in many years, and I would maintain Eric's leadership and steady commitment to excellence, transparency, and adaptation play a key role in the district's renewed momentum. There is a noticeable sense of trust, progress, and future vision that will help guide our schools into the century. All right, that just got mixed up a little, sorry. Especially with long overdue capital projects and investments now on the immediate horizon. And again, identified areas of growth. I felt that I could not check off exemplary, mainly due to some of the issues around Pride Day and the fact that we did not hear as much as I would have liked about the MTS system and how it's progressing. I believe the Superintendent Tracy believes that equity is important, but some of the people underneath him don't take the steps to think their actions through, which have led to a couple misunderstandings, such as the buttons for Pride Day versus the survey in the middle school. There is room for improvement in the safety and efficiency of learning environments by Ensuring CO2 levels are continuously measured and managed via basic ventilation methods such as window opening. Research from Harvard and MIT confirms that cognition and test scores improve significantly with managing indoor classroom air quality and keeping CO2 levels below 800 parts per million of CO2. Excuse me. Superintendent's performance goals. The student learning goals met. Professional practice. I should actually read. I'm sorry. I'll move back. Student learning goals. Goal number 4, student learning multi-tiered system of support. Met. Professional practice goal. Goal number 5 is professional learning. Continuing with the year, the superintendent induction program as outlined and presented in the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, met. District improvement goal number 1. By December 30th, 2022, the superintendent will guide the district to the development of a 3-year strategic plan that includes a full review of our mission, vision, and the development of core beliefs for the district. Met. District improvement plan number 2. Goal number 2. The superintendent will continue to examine and investigate district systems and work to make them more efficient. The initial focus will begin with professional development, the process for credits for professional development, salary scale, movement, the process for requesting time off, and the process for examining student data. Met. District improvement goal number 3. The superintendent will set the equity vision for the district and place equity at the center of all discussions related to district goals and teaching and learning. There will be support for professional development activities and consistent examination of data that will help to drive the equity focus. Met. Superintendent's performance rating for standard number 1, instructional leadership. 1E, this would be data-informed decision-making. Goal number 2, district improvement, building efficient systems. Goal number 3, district improvement, equity focus in the culture and building. Goal number 4, student learning, a multi-tiered system of support. Proficient. Overall rating for standard 1 instructional leadership is proficient. And a note we have here, Superintendent Tracy uses many methods to collect data from all members of the community, surveys, focus groups, and an ongoing invitation to call, email, and meet in person. He involves all members of the community when collecting data, staff, students, school committee members, town boards, and other members and parents, which gives him a thorough view of what needs to be addressed and what the district is doing well. In my time on the school committee, I frequently hear and see Mr. Tracy keeping equity at the center of all decision-making. One concrete way this has been implemented using the Panorama software to not only track students' progress, but to ensure equity for students in a data-driven way. Excuse me. The superintendent's performance rating for standard number 2, management and operations. 2B, human resources, management and development. Goal number 2, district improvement, building efficient systems, is proficient. 2D, law, ethics, and policies. Goal number 2, district improvement, building efficient systems. Goal number 3, district improvement, equity focus, culture building. Goal number 4, student learning, multi-tiered system of support, proficient. Overall rating for standard number 2, management and operations, proficient. Some comments. Eric is detail-oriented and organized, always responding to school committee requests for detailed information and data. I constantly marvel at his ability to juggle so many huge projects such as the MSBA, Cutler School Project, and athletic fields, to name a few. This year, we also welcomed 2 new principals that needed to get up to speed. Superintendent's performance rating for standard number 3, family and community engagement. 3A, engagement. Goal number 1, district improvement, complete the strategic plan document. Goal number 3, district improvement, equity focus, cultural building. Got a score of proficient. 3B, sharing responsibilities, also a score of proficient. Oh, sorry, goal number 1 was district improvement, complete the strategic plan document. Goal number 3, equity focus and culture building. And again, that was part of that proficient. 3C is communication. And goal number 1 is district involvement, equity focus, and culture building. Erica scored exemplary. Overall rating for standards 3, family and community engagement, is exemplary. Community, some comments. Community engagement and engagement are areas of focus, areas of strength for Eric. Both his formal presentations to community stakeholders, town meetings, school committee reports, and his informal messages, weekly emails, and social media convey tremendous knowledge, integrity, openness, and overall professionalism. Superintendent Tracy's strong suit is clear and concise communication with all stakeholders in the district. Mr. Tracy is transparent in his decision-making and works with everyone from our student body, parents, teachers, to town officials in setting clear goals for our district and facilitating a cohesive learning community throughout our town. Superintendent performance rating for standard 4, professional culture. 4A, commitment to high standards. Goal number 1, district improvement, equity focus, and culture building. Goal number 3, district improvement, equity focus, and culture building, a score of proficient. 4C, communication. Goal number 2, building efficient systems, the score of exemplary. 4D, continuous learning. Goal number 5, professional learning, the score is proficient. And then 4E, shared vision, student learning, multi-tiered system of support, the goal score of proficient. Overall rating of standard 4, professional culture, is proficient. Looking back at this, I probably should have written it backwards. Would have made more sense. But excellent job, Eric. It was really funny going through this because a lot of the same words were used over and over again. I think that's what actually triggered me to do the word cloud. I'll send that along.
I would love to see the word. So I think what we do eventually need to vote, but does anyone have questions for David or discussion for the group? Anything about the document that's before you that you want to ask about?
I hope that everyone feels that they were, recognized in here enough. That's sort of the toughest part without going overboard and putting too much in, especially having to read it aloud. But I wanted to make sure that, everybody's voice was heard.
Okay. And I do think that's the voice that, that I know that from in my past couple years, one of the things people said, it should feel a little bit plagiarized. Hopefully you felt like at some point you felt like, wait a minute, I wrote that. That's the idea. And that's a good thing. All right, well, maybe we need a motion.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District accept the cumulative, it's been a long day, right? Cumulative evaluation as written.
Second.
Second by Jen Carr. So I guess if there's any other further discussion, and also if anyone would like to speak, or if Eric has questions, or if you want to speak directly to Eric about anything in your evaluation, now's the chance.
I don't know if it would be possible to have major, there are a couple scores I would have changed based on the presentations that we had today.
I know.
But we didn't have them prior to us turning in the evaluation.
But
so
that's okay. It's an accurate, at the time,
Yeah.
what you stated was accurate. That's all that mattered, right?
Yep.
And the fact that,
So I'll just put it on the next one.
Right.
Remember?
I'm gonna add that to my evidence for the fall.
There you go.
Since this was late, no.
That means I can remember it when I'm
Yeah.
looking at it.
No, and I think, I mean, yes, this is an important document, but also that feedback is important, like that you,
Yeah.
and you just provided it. So,
I have, I guess, just a comment. The identified areas for growth, all three feel like really specific examples that I don't feel like come from the entire group. And I'm wondering, this is my first time doing this, so I'd love to know if that feels like appropriate as a cumulative doc, or if that's something that should just live on our individual documents.
My thought process on that, I think that's a good call. My thought process on that was the fact that there were a few where everything was really saying a lot of the same things. It was important to get that other side to put it in there. When you look at the overall like assessment in sort of the scores, I think it shows that there's, you know, while specific, there were a few things that, you know, committee members would like to see sort of changed moving forward, and that's not a bad thing. This is the time to, you know, to mention that in a formal review, excuse me, and to be officially put on the record for that. So that was my thought process in putting it on. I do understand where you're coming from too, because
I just wanted, because I actually had a similar, I guess, concern, but not really a concern. I think that these are, having looked at the individual evaluations, these are certainly were identified areas for growth. They weren't identified by, in other words, as I read the list, well, I didn't identify all these areas, and so it feels a little bit, but I felt, I struggled a little bit with what you're saying, but I felt like, because it does say identified areas for growth, it doesn't say the entire committee, it's like members of the committee identified these areas.
Yeah,
I
going
did
forward,
put
I'd
a-
probably say areas identified by individual members include. That's probably what I would say, unless it's an area identified by more than one of us.
Yeah, but I did feel.
I didn't feel like it was.
I
saying
felt like
we
that was,
agree
oh,
100%.
right, and I did feel like, because it really just does areas, identified areas for growth, you know, I felt okay about it, even though, but I did feel the same way. I was like, well, wait a minute, I didn't say all those
Say
things.
that.
But it's necessarily, I think it's,
well, again,
know.
it's really different when going through here. You want to, again, you want to make sure that everyone has an equal voice. You know, and then I did sort of play with the title on how I was going to list it, and then where to list it. That was another thing too, but.
yeah, and I guess from my point of view in voting on it, these are all areas that I am aware that my colleagues on the school committee identified and are concerned about. Like, they're all areas that, none of these were something that I read and thought to myself, what? Like, you know, they were all things that I understood from listening to my colleagues, what their concerns were. So, accurate in that sense, I guess.
My
David?
one comment is, it's just a shame that the structure of eventually distilling it down to one rating,
Correct.
proficient, when my own feeling is the exemplary elements in it were, together with the level of effort, diligence, and all the things there, you know, it ends up feeling like that's not fully recognized. It's there, but the fact that it boils down to one thing, I'd almost love to see that line removed and just accept the fact that not everybody's exceptional at every single thing, but that there's recognition that Eric has done an amazing amount of work at great personal sacrifice, I think, to achieve the level of change and the velocity of change compared to where we were. So I personally would like to recognise that.
Agreed.
It's definitely an imperfect assessment system.
Which is not,
But,
not criticising the
But
summary,
being
but
here
anyway.
as long as I have, you should have seen the old one.
Yeah, and I want to, I do want to recognize that Anna Siedzik did participate and submit, and also is magical. She did something with the Word document that none of the rest of us did. Hers was all properly numbered, and like, I don't know what hers was like. I don't know.
Shouldn't have-
No formatting issues.
Page 12 of 7,
No,
which mine
page
kept
12 of
saying.
7. So I just want to acknowledge her, having done that after she'd already left the committee. All right, Eric, did you have any questions for us? You certainly have the opportunity to, with the individual evaluations, you certainly have the opportunity to reach out to all of us individually as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I think, as Jen said, it's just it's a snapshot, and here's what we have to work with. So I think it's fair, and I think it's, the reality is there's always more work to do. There's a lot more for us to do in the district, and I think this gives me kind of a jumping off point to say, okay, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, and here's some of the ways to get there. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the time that everybody put into this. I know this system created by the state is not very straightforward in a lot of ways. We do the same thing with teachers. It's a similar document, and it ends up a jumble, but I appreciate it. I think, I think everybody understands my commitment to the district and to the communities, and continuing to build those relationships and make the changes necessary so that people understand the value of the district and bringing the communities together. And that's where I'm always going to fall back to. I think it's our responsibility to bring the communities together and keep them, to be that glue, if you will, in the middle of all that's going on within our communities. And whether it's the budget or whether it's things that we can get involved in with the COAs or just different opportunities for our kids to be in the community. I think I'm always going to come back to that as my main goal. That's always way up here that I can't quite get to, but it continues to be my driver, and my commitment is still here, and certainly look forward to starting right after July 1st to take a couple weeks off and getting going again and really getting the next round of growth ready for us with the leadership team and then with our staff. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Sure.
Okay. We have the motion on the table, and it was seconded, correct?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? And it is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Thank you, David, very much for your work on that. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. David,
Yeah.
there is something that I don't remember, but I know we have to do a thing with this. Would you like me to do that, whatever it is? I can't remember. We've just sent it to someone. I can find that out, or you can.
Yeah, man, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I had to do
I'm sure it'll come to me
something
like
last year.
Coming home, but I'm done for the day mentally.
Would you like me to figure out who to send it to?
Find out.
Yeah, and if I
Okay.
think
Thank you.
of it, I'll.
I will do
Text
it.
you.
I probably have it in an email from last year, but to David Frankel's point, that one little check mark goes to someone in the state.
Right. Oh, is that what happens?
Yes.
Probably important.
I got it.
Okay. I'll figure that out. Okay. Moving on. I don't find, yep, go ahead.
No, committee reports.
Okay. No finance? All right, committee reports. Capital Finance, we have,
We've set our first meeting for June 29th.
okay, excellent. June 29th. Policy?
Yeah, we have our next meeting set. right.
Monday night, right?
Yeah, this Monday night, that's right.
The 12th?
12.
Yep.
Okay. And negotiations, we are going to give an update in executive session. And our next meeting is Tuesday. Tuesday at 3:30 is our next meeting. All right, superintendent report.
All righty, lots going on. I mean, you've heard about quite a bit of it, but I do want to congratulate Principal Menegoni and the high school staff for an amazing graduation this past Saturday. It was a tearjerker, and when you can make Brian Menegoni cry, well, that, as he described, is a meme. So, you know, it was great ceremony, well done. Everybody I talked to thought it was an amazing ceremony. Our valedictorian, Chloe Gurn, and our salutatorian, Maya Beach, great speeches, really put it all together for the class. And then back up to last Thursday at Candlelight, the speeches were again amazing. Joe Marr was the speaker that the kids selected this year, the staff speaker, and he did a whole speech on connecting the dots with ChatGPT and using ChatGPT to generate prompts to help him to compare the class of 23. Are they better than ones and zeros? So it was quite an interesting speech where he had ChatGPT make the prompts and then he wrote the rest off of the prompts. So it was well done. It was really fun. Our athletics, just about all of our teams, I think our spring teams are still going between baseball and tennis and lacrosse. Everything continues to move forward. Our two tennis teams have moved into the third round, baseball as well, excuse me, and we'll continue to watch them, and that's always exciting at this time of the year, having so many different things. Last Friday night, I, along with Dr. Carr, was in the dunk tank, the Bucher, still surviving an injury from that. No. Yeah. How many times can you hit different parts of your body on a dunk tank? But it was all right. Guys my size are not supposed to be in dunk tanks. I realized that.
Was it warm at least?
It was not. But it was fun. The kids had a blast, and it was also double fun because I knew so many more of the kids from being there the 3 weeks previous. We could taunt them a little bit more and have some fun. It was a good time. But I left there, dried off, changed, went over to the Culture Fest at the Cutler School that evening, and as we watched a storm go around us, we stayed out and listened to a couple of different bands, had some dumplings, had some empanadas, talked to different people, so that was fun. There was a waffle truck as well. I didn't get to experience that, but I was full on dumplings, so it was a good time. Winthrop Field Day I went to yesterday, went really well. You know, I always get to see Winthrop because in my drive back and forth on 1A, I pass Winthrop almost every day, 5 times. And I see the changes, like, oh, all the chairs are out, this is gonna happen, or this is out. So I stopped in for our field day. Got to watch all the school records being set. You know, the obstacle course, there were a number of school records set again this year compared to previous years, but it's fun. I think Cutler's also had theirs today. And then on the same day as Winthrop Field Day, Cutler had a fifth grade leadership day where the 5th grade students teach the younger kids how to do something. So it's of their choosing. So one of the classes I went into was 5th grade students, 2 boys and a girl, teaching kids how to make cartoons, like comic strip cartoons, or teaching kids how to make certain devices or how to play certain games. And they did soccer outside, and they did bracelet building inside. So there was all kinds of different events that were 100% run by the 5th graders working with the younger kids. So that's always fun. And then that's really it for all the things that are going on. We do have the moving up ceremony next Friday for the middle school. Certainly a nice ceremony where the 8th graders move up and are kind of walked out with the high school principal into their next chapters. And then we just want to touch base on a quick announcement. We run an extended school year program in the summer at the Winthrop School, and we are in need of some staffing for that. So if you know people who are certified ILP teachers or ILP TAs that are willing to be involved, it runs from July 10th to August 17th. 8 to 1 Monday through Thursday, so not a bad schedule for the summer. We're also looking for an academic skills teacher for the middle school level kids. They're also within that extended year program, so some opportunities there. And if you go to School Spring, you can always see all of the positions that we have advertised in anticipation of next year with some of the changes, staffing changes that are occurring between retirements and people moving on or moving up. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions? Okay. I don't really have much to report. I did, from the school committee, Francesca and I did get to go to graduation. Mr. Tracy forgot to mention that it was pretty chilly at graduation. I sat next to Julia Sappas, who was just here as one of our student reps, and she was the person who had to do the, to raise the scepter, to get them to, she was looking very cold, and as were all of the people that had worn their outfit they had planned for graduation. But it was great. It was a great,
You
it
had the
was,
tent,
it was
we
a
were
great
fortunate.
day. Yeah, we were dry. We were dry.
Yep.
So, I think that's it. People have topics for future meetings?
There should be the Wenham, I saw a rough draft, but the Wenham Master Plan vision.
So you want to give a report on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that should be available too.
You're ready, you think you're ready to do that
I think by then we will be. I've seen a rough
22nd.
draft.
on the 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
Okay. Great.
I don't know where is there a similar one for Hamilton?
I am not ready to do that yet, but hopefully there will be at some point. Yeah. But no, I'm not ready to give that, but yeah. But I can give perhaps a briefer update, but it sounds like you've got something to actually present, which would be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Anything else? Okay. All right. Then, I am gonna make a motion. I move that we adjourn into executive session for purpose number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the newly formed teaching assistant union, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and not to return to open session.
Second.
Ooh, that was close. I'm going to give it to Amy. Second by Amy. It needs to be a roll call vote. David?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Tina's a yes.
Yes.
Julie? Jen?
Yes.
All right, and it is unanimous of the 6 members present, and we are adjourned into executive session.